Ever wonder how history's greatest minds would react to AI in classrooms? It's like a time-traveling debate today as we dive into how Socrates, Plato, even Steve Jobs might view this tech revolution in education.
Buckle up, because we're about to unpack some fascinating insights from an article we found exploring both the hopes and the concerns these big thinkers might have about AI's role in shaping young minds.
You're here because, like us, you're curious. You value learning, but you also want it to be engaging and effective. So let's start with the OG of critical thinking, Socrates. Our source material hints that he might not be so quick to embrace the algorithm.
Yeah, Socrates was all about asking tough questions, using dialogue to get to the core of an issue. Imagine him in a classroom, staring down an AI tutor and asking, does this machine truly teach, or does it merely provide the illusion of knowledge?
It's almost like he'd be worried we'd ace the test, but totally miss the point of the lesson, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Some educators believe AI could actually help facilitate those deep Socratic dialogues, but in a personalized way.
Now, that's an angle I hadn't considered. It's like giving everyone their own personal Socrates, pushing them to think critically and engage deeply with the material.
Okay, so from questioning, we move to Plato's famous allegory of the cave. Remember, the one where people mistake shadows for reality.
Exactly. This article suggests that Plato might see AI as a similar double-edged sword. Are we using it to illuminate the world outside the cave, or are we just creating new, more convincing shadows?
So how do we make sure AI in education is guiding us toward truth, not just more sophisticated illusions?
It all comes down to design and intent. Are we narrowing students' perspectives with AI-curated echo chambers of information, or are we using it to open their minds to diverse viewpoints and challenge their assumptions? Plato would definitely advocate for the latter.
It's like choosing between an AI that's a carefully controlled museum exhibit versus one that's this wild, sprawling library of knowledge. I know where I'd rather be. But speaking of different approaches, let's bring in Aristotle, the master of logic and practicality. What would he make of all this?
Right, unlike Plato's idealism, Aristotle was all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
He might say, look, AI can be incredibly efficient at personalizing learning plans or giving feedback, which frees up human educators to focus on what they do best, things like fostering critical thinking, creativity, and character.
So he sees AI as a tool to enhance, not replace, the human element of teaching. Which makes you wonder what Aristotle would think about those AI grading systems some schools are experimenting with. Can an algorithm really understand something as nuanced as a student's moral compass or their ability to think critically?
That's where it gets really interesting. Aristotle was all about asking why, and he might push back on the idea of AI being the ultimate judge of something as complex as a young person's understanding. It's almost as if trying to quantify those qualities could actually be detrimental to a student's development.
This is where I think we need to bring in some of that Silicon Valley vision. Time to hear from Steve Jobs, the man obsessed with user experience.
Jobs. He revolutionized personal computing by making technology intuitive and user-friendly. He probably imagined a world where education was just as engaging and personalized as our smartphones.
And this article suggests he'd be incredibly enthusiastic about AI's potential to do just that. He might even see AI as this generation's personal computer, a tool to make high-quality education accessible to everyone.
Exactly. Imagine educational apps designed with the same sleekness and user-friendliness as the devices we use every day. Jobs would probably champion any AI that empowers students to learn at their own pace in a way that feels natural and intuitive.
Okay, but before we get too excited about designing the next generation of educational apps, let's bring in Marie Curie, a scientist who understood the importance of both innovation and responsibility.
Absolutely. Curie's story reminds us that even the most groundbreaking tools must be developed and used ethically, especially when it comes to shaping young minds. She might even caution us to consider the unintended consequences of AI in the classroom.
She'd probably be a big advocate for making sure AI in education is equitable and doesn't accidentally disadvantage certain groups of students. And that leads us to another important voice, Gandhi. Known for his unwavering belief in social justice, how do you think he'd view AI's role in education?
Gandhi believed deeply in the power of education to uplift individuals and communities, but he also believed in challenging systems that perpetuate inequality.
So he'd be wary of AI widening the gap between the haves and have-nots when it comes to educational resources.
Precisely. Gandhi would want us to ask ourselves some tough questions. Is this technology creating a more just and equitable system, or is it making existing disparities even worse?
It's a question we can't afford to ignore. So far, we've heard from Socrates on questioning. Plato on truth, Aristotle on balance, Jobs on user experience, Curie on responsibility, and Gandhi on social justice. What a fascinating mix of perspectives.
It really highlights just how complex this issue is.
It's really incredible how these figures from history, though separated by centuries, can still spark such relevant conversations about technology's place in our lives.
It really speaks to how certain questions about progress and purpose, they resonate across time, don't they? Like with the printing press, then the internet, and now AI. Each of these innovations has forced us to rethink how we learn and share knowledge.
And speaking of impact, so far we've mostly focused on students, but what about the teachers? Would Socrates see AI as a threat to their role, or could he see it as a valuable tool?
Ooh, that's a question that would really intrigue him. I mean, remember how much Socrates valued dialogue as a way to ignite critical thinking? He might actually see a lot of potential in AI systems helping teachers by, say, providing more personalized feedback to students. Like imagine if it could pinpoint exactly where a student is struggling and suggest resources tailored to their needs.
So instead of replacing teachers, AI could actually free them up to focus on what they do best, inspiring students, nurturing their curiosity.
Exactly. Guiding them to become well-rounded individuals, not just test takers. It circles back to what we were saying about Aristotle's emphasis on balance AI, could handle those more technical aspects of teaching so educators can really focus on the things that make learning meaningful.
It's almost like giving teachers superpowers. Like imagine a classroom where the AI helps tailor the curriculum to each student's learning style.
And frees up the teacher to provide more individualized attention and mentorship. That's a really compelling vision.
Right. But I imagine even Steve Jobs, with his focus on making technology intuitive, he'd probably emphasize how important it is to implement these AI systems thoughtfully and ethically.
Oh, absolutely. It's not enough to just create educational apps that look sleek and modern. We need to make sure they're actually effective for all students.
And that they're accessible to everyone, regardless of background or learning differences.
Precisely. And this is where Curie's emphasis on scientific rigor becomes really important, We have to be incredibly careful about the data we're using to train these AI systems. If we're not careful, we could end up perpetuating existing inequalities instead of breaking them down.
That's a really good point. Like, imagine if we create an AI that's supposed to be personalizing learning paths, but because of biased data, it starts steering certain students, maybe based on gender or socioeconomic background, towards specific fields.
Exactly. We could end up reinforcing harmful stereotypes without even realizing it. And this ties directly into what we were saying about Gandhi's focus on social justice, right?
Absolutely. He'd want to make sure this technology is being used to lift everyone up, not just a select few. It's like education was so central to his whole philosophy. He saw it as a pathway to equality and empowerment, and AI has the potential to either help or hinder that progress.
It's a lot like his efforts to promote education for all, regardless of background. We had to keep that spirit in mind as we're navigating these new waters.
Definitely, because when you really get down to it, AI is just a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
It all comes down to how we choose to use it.
Wow. After spending all this time with you, really digging into these big, complex issues surrounding AI and education, I think one thing has become crystal clear.
What's that?
It's not about trying to predict the future, is it? It's about recognizing that we have choices to make, just like the thinkers we've been discussing. They faced huge changes in their own times, and they had to figure out how to navigate them.
That's such a great point. It makes me think of something Marie Curie once said, "Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less." Those words feel especially relevant to this whole conversation about AI. It's not about being afraid of this technology, but about being informed and thoughtful about how we use it.
It brings me back to those early discussions, with Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Those weren't just ivory tower debates, were they? They were grappling with how to build a society that valued knowledge, that prepared its citizens to think critically about the world around them. And those same questions feel incredibly relevant today as AI has the potential to reshape so much of how we learn and teach.
It's about finding ways to use this technology to empower people, not control them, to expand access to quality education for everyone, not just a select few. And maybe most importantly, remembering that technology should be a tool that serves humanity, not the other way around.
Absolutely. And that means being really intentional about the ethical implications, being transparent about how these systems are being designed and used, and never forgetting about the potential impact, positive and negative, on individuals and communities.
It's a lot to consider, and honestly, I think we've only scratched the surface here, but that's okay. The future of AI in education, it's not something that's going to be decided overnight or even in a series of conversations like this. It's going to be an ongoing process, a journey of discovery and adaptation.
And it's a journey that we're all on together, right? Educators, policymakers, parents, students, we all have a role to play in shaping how AI shapes education.
Exactly. It's going to take open dialogue, a willingness to challenge our assumptions, and a shared commitment to creating a future where technology is used to illuminate, not to obscure, the path to knowledge and understanding.
We've spent this episode thinking about how some of history's greatest minds might approach this exciting new frontier. But ultimately, it's up to each of us, here and now, to decide how this story unfolds.
That's right. So, to everyone listening, here's our question to you. What role will you play in shaping the future of AI in education? We hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge and maybe even more importantly, the inspiration to figure that out.